Okay, Roland's back. Roland Martin, by the way, CNN analyst, is also the author of the first Barack Obama's Road to the White House. Roland, I stopped you in the middle of a sentence because you were giving us a solution, and the second part of the solution to dealing with this violence in Chicago. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I think the second phase is what you then have to do is create the kind of community partnerships that late Atlanta Mayor Maynard Jackson did in that particular city, where what he looked at was a 1, 3, 5, 10-year approach. And that is, if you take the most violent neighborhoods and then say, okay, how do we then infuse these particular neighborhoods with resources, but also partnership with the people who live there? And that is community centers, community activists, because the police cannot do it alone. You've got to create a culture in these neighborhoods where people say, this is our neighborhood, and we're going to take it back. So what that means is you've got to have community policing. You've got to have citizen patrol. You've got to have people willing to call in when they see drug activity, when they see violent
How much of that do we have? You know the South Side very well. How much of that exists? Is there an infrastructure upon which can be built?
Well, first of all, you have the South Side, you have the West Side, you have the same thing happening in terms of the suburbs. And so you do have the infrastructure, but you've got to have the political leaders willing to sit down with the community leaders and say, we're in this thing together. But you can't have community leaders saying it's only your job. You then also got to, and I've said this very clear, you've got to have churches also that are simply not open just on Sunday or Wednesday for Bible study. If you have an education issue, you must be creating tutorial programs in these churches, utilizing retired teachers, those who also want to assist. But you also got to have the men of these churches willing to step up in the men's ministry and saying, we are going to mentor and deal with these young men right now. Now, the moment they come out of the womb, all the way up. Because frankly, you have kids who have no fathers at home, so you have no real supervision going on.
All right, so you've always held the view that this responsibility has to be shared between civil authorities and the community. Let me ask you about this one. Let me ask you about this one. It seems there are ample guns in Chicago at the moment. Where do you come down on this whole business about people trying to allow guns to be sold in Chicago on the understanding that if people have guns, if regular civilians are allowed to have guns, it might stop somebody from trying to attack them?
Yeah, but here's the deal, though. The reality is, I support gun control. I have no issue with that. I don't understand the need for somebody saying I need 10, 15, 20 guns. To me, that's nonsense. But I will say this here. The reality is, the violence that's taking place, they're not going to gun shops. They're not going to the suburbs and buying a gun and bringing it to the city. There's an underground gun culture that is going on. What you have to do, you must tackle the enormous gang problem in this city. Remember a few years ago after the LA riots when President Bush actually sat down with some gang leaders? And I'll go ahead and say it. Mayor Daley should have a public sit down with gang leaders.
Wow.
Now, follow me here, because that's your real issue. You have throngs of men, Hispanic, African-American, white, who are in these gangs. The problem with these kids being killed in Chicago, when you shut down schools in communities, they are now crossing gang zones. Chicago does not have a significant bus system here. And so you have a kid, that kid has to take a city bus or walk to a school. So they're walking through gang zones. If you don't look directly at the problem and say, I'm going to sit down with these folks and make it clear that we have to confront this, it's going to continue.
You tell Mayor Daley if he wants to do that, we'll put it on TV. I mean, it's an interesting idea.
No. I will say this here. That conversation needs to be not on television, but the follow-up then should be on television, but it should be a frank conversation with those gang leaders, because that's the fundamental problem in Chicago.
All right, Roland, good to talk to you. Roland Martin, very passionate about this. He knows a lot about it. He's a CNN analyst and the author of the first President Barack Obama's Road to the White House. Roland, good to see you. Come back whenever you want to.